talk more about Hollywood versus President Trump. Joining me here in Los Angeles, Dr. Gina Loudon, host of America Trends with Dr. Gina, and Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host. Thank you all for having me to your lovely place
welcome.
Out here.
Sorry about the rain.
Yes, Scotland in L.A. Leslie, what about this? I mean, is it different than it's been? Is it a different, as you heard Dean Cain there, kind of reaction out here?
I don't think so. I mean, I saw Hollywood acting this way. Hollywood is typically Democratic and left-leaning and liberal and angry and yelling at a Republican president. We saw this when George W. Bush was president. We saw this when we invaded Iraq. I don't find it that different. And there are so many celebrities that are either saying embrace or I support. Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford support. You heard Matthew McConaughey, Morgan Freeman, who are saying, hey, let's come together. So to me, it's not that different. Largely, Hollywood has always been very liberal and Democrat, with the exception of Ronald Reagan, who was one of theirs and came from the state.
Right. Gina, I have some friends in the industry, and they say to me that they feel it. They feel the pressure. And if they say anything, do anything, that the industry comes down on them.
Absolutely. It's tyranny of free thought, right? You are not allowed to not be lockstep with what the elite in Hollywood think. And I guess, you know, you're dealing with people here, Brett, who specialize in making things up and make money for making things up. And then they expect the American people to believe what they say and to you know, somehow represent the reality when they just don't. And so I think that, you know, if they would allow, think about this for just a moment, just a little dissent, just a little civil discourse, I think then when they did speak out, people would actually be interested in what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at Morgan Freeman, who has this quote. He says, I supported Hillary in the election. Now it feels like we are jumping off a cliff. We just have to find out how we can land. I'm not scared, though. I'm holding out hope that Donald Trump has to be a good president. He can't not be. What I see is a guy who will not lose. I mean, that seems practical. You could be opposed to him, but that at least you're going to give him a chance, right?
Well, that's his opinion, and he's entitled to it, just as the people who say, hey, I'm jumping off a cliff, and they do feel frightened, unlike Morgan Freeman, or the people that, you know, love and support the president, even, you know, more so than what Morgan Freeman would say. When you look at what Morgan Freeman is saying, I don't see any attacks against Morgan Freeman. I don't see that guy short of work. He's on everything that I watch. I'm a fan of his as well.
But he's iconic.
Yeah, but
only
Matthew
the people who are
McConaughey,
iconic
Harrison Ford,
but the B-level
Morgan
actors
Freeman, they're not losing jobs, they're not losing money, and if you look at the box office, Hollywood is not losing cash. Neither are these actors on either side of this.
But here's what's happening. There is such dissension right now because these people are stirring it up. You know, when we had the riots, for example, at Berkeley, and you have actors and directors tweeting horrible things out about violence. You have Madonna actually saying she wants to blow up the White House. These kinds of things. I was very afraid when Obama was elected. Obamacare scared me and my conservative friends to death, but there was no violence, there were no threats, this was peaceful protesting. I wish that we could have that sort of civil discourse with the left right now, because we understand being afraid. We were for 8 years.
Well,
you're shaking your head.
Yeah, well, there were Democrats who were supporting the Affordable Care Act who had their lives and their homes threatened and their offices threatened, not necessarily by you, but by some people who were very frightened, not only of President Obama, but certainly of the Affordable Care Act and passage of that legislation. So I would disagree with that.
But Leslie, does Hollywood realize how they play in the middle of the country? For example, for the states that really turned the election, how they kind of their messaging plays in the Michigans, the Ohios, the Rust Belt states?
I don't think they care, because people are going to watch their movies. People largely will watch their movies because it's an escape from our lives, whether we're happy with them or whether we're feeling that we're frightened and want to jump off a cliff. So I don't think they think about that, because they're not running for office. I mean, if you're a politician and running, you should care about those states. Quite frankly, they're in a very different league, as you know, Hollywood people. They live in a very different league. I'm going to say something. I have a friend who works in the music industry, okay? And I will not mention her name, but somebody very, very big sat down to eat lunch and got up and walked away. And he said she couldn't even throw something out because somebody does it for her. They don't live where middle America and the Rust Belt live. And because they have a microphone, they have a platform, and they have the cameras rolling, they feel, some of them, that it's their responsibility, or because they have that power and that outlet, the ability to use that to further their cause. And Hollywood has always been very liberal and democratic.
So that disconnect is there, Gina.
Yeah.
Then they shouldn't go around acting like they're actually campaigning somehow for the little guy. These people think because they're famous that their opinion matters more than that guy in middle America that you mentioned, Brett. And I have a problem with that when they're saying that they're standing up for the little guy when they're simply not. I guess it's a good thing that people in Hollywood can sing because they are preaching to the choir. Obviously, people aren't buying what they're selling. They want them to shut up and sing. They're tired of elitism all across the board, in media, in politics, and in Hollywood. And I'm afraid they're going to get that handed to them in one way or another.
Gina, Leslie, thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett.